All right, a couple of weeks away now from Ade Dubois. Look, Dubois has been saying all the right things. We're hearing good things from his camp. Don Charles has been speaking so well about him as well. Obviously, look, AJ is the favourite. I think most would concede to that. What kind of chance, though, do you give a Dubois? Like, if you're sort of playing it in percentage terms, what percentage chance do you give Dubois in this?
He's got to take it with his two huge, big hands, this opportunity. He's got the right mindset. He's in the last week, he said, I feel like the Kingslayer. I like that expression. He's put Joshua up there on a pedestal. The fact he's putting Joshua up there on a pedestal is a good thing, because this is an ambition he's had for a very long time to beat Anthony Joshua. We know all the gym stories, the things that people talk about, the fact that he's gone very well against Anthony Joshua in the gym. He just needs to put it into practice in a ring right now. I like the fact he went there and he had that steely face when they had the press conference behind the scenes. He was trying to wind Anthony Joshua up. He'll have taken some kind of succor from that, some kind of joy and delight. Don Charles has been very good for him because he's setting the mindset very cleverly and carefully. Frank Warren's important. Stan Dubois' father's important. They're all important because Dubois got the physical assets to win the fight. Got to win the battle of the jab, detonate his right hand, get on the inside with Anthony Joshua and believe, because that's where he's doubted before. He's had doubts against Joe Joyce. He had doubts against Alexander Usyk in that fight. He didn't in the last two fights. He weathered the storm of doubt against Jarrell Miller. He put that into practice against Filip Hrgović. So he's just got to continue that momentum.
You just pointed out a couple of things there, which I thought was interesting. And it kind of made me think, they're quite smart with Daniel Dubois. He is inexperienced, right? Daniel Dubois is only 26. But you mentioned a few names there, and he's got a lot of experience behind him. You mentioned Frank, you mentioned Don, his father. So although Daniel might be inexperienced, the team behind him have seen it and done it. And I just wonder how much of a factor that's going to play on a big night.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think it is. I think Frank Warren's always backed him to the hilt. Frank Warren backed him against Usyk, that it wasn't a low blow against Usyk. I mean, I don't know whether you think it was a low blow or not, but I've had long rows with Frank Warren about it. It's still going on. He will not have it that it was a low blow. But Daniel Dubois, just as I say, he's got all the physical assets. What he needed was the backing and belief and growth. And I think 2 years on, or a year on from Usyk, 3 years on from Joe Joyce, he's a very different animal.
Yeah.
And I like the fact he's traveling the world a bit more on his own. I think he's got a girlfriend in Brazil, hasn't he? He's been training in Brazil. He's been out on his own there. Almost like he's had his rite of passage. The native has left the village kind of thing. The youngster has left the village to go and find his manhood. And it's a weird thing to talk about with him because he's already had so many big fights. But maybe he's just reaching manhood mentally in terms of his fighting days.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And look, I think it's going to be an incredible fight. And I've already said, I think we're in the must-win camp for AJ. Like AJ has to win. I can't see AJ wanting to rebuild again if he does lose, especially if he loses this one. Because let's be honest, this fight probably isn't going to go points, so someone's going to get knocked out. So if AJ were to get knocked out by Dubois, I can't see it happening again. The rebuild. If Dubois loses, I can see a rebuild because he's only 26. Not saying there's no pressure on Dubois, because there still is a huge amount of pressure. He's the IBF heavyweight champion. But I feel like all the pressure here is on AJ. That AJ just has to get this done because of fights being spoken about in the future and because he's been a former unified heavyweight champion. He has to win this fight.
Yeah, there is more pressure on Anthony Joshua. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And I completely agree that there isn't a rebuild. Well, there's probably a couple of fights left for Anthony Joshua. The trouble is they've talked about the rebuild. They've talked about three-time heavyweight champion of the world. It's the way that they've built this fight. It's the way that Eddie Hearn's driven this fight. That Anthony Joshua is so ambitious to be 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. We haven't really heard that from Anthony Joshua. So the narrative does put pressure on him. He has to win. It's weird with Anthony because he always has to win, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. It's because we expect so much from him. That it's two completely different courses for these guys. Daniel Dubois can come back and win a world title again. Hannah's got great fights out there against other people, depending on how he loses. I mean, if he gets sparked out in a minute and a half by Anthony Joshua, who just beats him up, then it's different, and it will be a difficult rebuild. But there's great fights out there for him. There's Agit Kabayel, there's Joseph Parker, there's Mo Zitauma, there's so many fights. There's a rematch with Joe Joyce if he wants it. He's had an unusual career in lots of ways. He's been really well managed. But the thing is for Joshua, as you rightly point out, and I completely agree with it, that this is a moment in which, because people have talked about the fight with Anthony Joshua, with Tyson Fury as well, everybody wants that fight. The pressure on him is to win almost for the greater good of a big fight happening as well. So he won't be focusing on that. It's just us talking about that. He won't even be worrying about it because he's got this big monster with a very heavy right hand and a decent jab in front of him, who believes in himself.
Yeah.
In 12 days' time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be something special. Again, we're hearing 96, 97,000.
Oh, it's 97 now.
97.
Oh, it's gone up.
It's gone up. Gone up a couple more.
Wow.
Which is insane. Let's hear from one man who sparred both fighters, the young, brilliant Moses Itauma. He popped into the studio last week and he gave his view on the fight.
You've sparred with Daniel Dubois, right? What was that experience like?
Many rounds. First time I sparred him was when I was 17. I was just sparred him. He was getting ready for Kevin Lorena, and I was getting ready for the World Championships as an amateur. And yeah, them rounds are very interesting. Very interesting.
How interesting?
As interesting as it gets. I don't really know. I don't want to say too much.
Well, let me throw a question at you. Then you've also sparred Anthony Joshua when you were younger as well.
Yeah.
Your experiences in the ring with both of them. Who do you think wins?
Do you know? I'm not going to use the sparring as like.
But you know their strengths and their weaknesses.
Not too much AJ, but probably Dubois. I do know a lot. But do you know what it is? It's all down to preparation with fights. Like you can have two trainers. And then have two trainers, same fighter, and completely different. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like with preparation, I think this is the key. And I'm not gonna lie, Ben Davies has got it on lock.
Do you believe that both guys have got a chance of winning this fight?
1,000,000%. On 1,000,000%. I just think AJ's got a bit more chance than Dubois.
But you do give Dubois a shot.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
100%. Dubois not a fool. Do you know what I mean? He didn't start boxing yesterday. Like I heard, like he went obviously through the whole England program, the amateurs and all that. Do you know what I mean? So I've got to give him a little bit of respect. But it's just like I feel like what AJ's been through in his career and the experiences has, and not only that, yeah, Ben Davison, Lee Wiley, and Barry in the corner. I feel like that's going to play a big part in it.
As you heard him there, said it's going to be a very, very close fight. Again, he's been in the ring with both recently. He is now, I will say this, part of Ben Davison's team. He does favour AJ. I'm not saying that's the reason why, but he's part of the team and it'll be random. It'll be very strange for someone to be part of a team and then favour someone else. But he favours AJ, but in a very, very close fight. What does Dubois do better than AJ?
It's a very good question. My first reaction was not a lot, but then he's shown a great resilience in his last couple of fights.
Could that be it then?
What does he do better? He probably takes shots better than Anthony Joshua does, I'd say.
I wouldn't argue with that.
I think Again, they both, well, from the outside, when we've looked at them, they've both had self-belief issues, we suspect, at some point. Yeah. Who doesn't, in all honesty? It's how you mask it or how you don't as a fighter, I suppose. But I'd say that. I think he takes a shot better. I think he's probably got a better chin, I think.
No, I mean, look, he took some big smacks from Jarrell Miller and Hrgovic, some real big smacks. And that's one thing he said on the face-off when I mentioned that. And he pointed at AJ and said, could he take those shots? So it's almost like he was saying it, like knowing, like, okay, yeah, I took him. I got hit, but I took him. Could you do it? So I think even he believes I've got a better chin than you, maybe more resilient than you. I spoke to our very own Spencer Oliver, and he thinks that Dubois probably has a better jab.
It's more prominent and it's more memorable. His jab is more memorable than Anthony Joshua's. But I think Joshua, when he's got his jab working right, is very, very good with it as well. And I think Joshua works really well off the jab. So does Dubois. I do think it's going to be a battle of the jab. They both detonate the right hand off the jab. You know, they're not a guy, neither of them is a guy that's suddenly going to pull out a right lead a la Muhammad Ali against who knows, I may be wrong about this, but, you know, a la George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle. But they're both, I think Dubois is slightly more fluid about how he throws his punches. But when Joshua's that big rock'em sock'em and he's got his movement right and he's in and out, he's so big and booming and dangerous. God, I'm getting excited thinking about this fight because I think they're going to feel each other out for about 6 minutes and then we're just going to have war.
Yeah.
And it's going to be who detonates, you know?
I'm so with you on it. I think they're going to look at each other and it's going to be very, okay, and then bang.
Yeah.
And then we'll, man, oh man, let's see who has more power, because both of them, as you say, really big, strong guys, powerfully built. One considerably younger than the other. And I wonder if that will play a part as well. Because I do think Dubois' gas tank, I think we saw it with Jarrell Miller. He seems to be able to go all the way. Like, he knocked Jarrell Miller out in the last few seconds of the last round. So we know his power lasts all the way up until the final minute. So I can't wait for it.